was raised by an alcoholic father. He started to raise us after my mom died when I was 8, and he wasn't a great man. But you learn a lot of lessons when you grow up in that household. When you grow up in a household that is unsafe and unsecure, and you don't really know what the day is going to bring, you learn resiliency really early. And when you grow up in a household where dad might be out on a bender for a few days and you're left home alone to take care of your 1-year-old twin brothers, you learn independence really quickly. And when you grow up in a household where the person who's supposed to keep you the safest and protect you from harm is the person who's harming you, you learn really early on how to stand up and advocate for yourself. So I don't wish for anyone to have the upbringing that we had. That's not what I ever wish for anybody. But I really appreciate the upbringing I did have because it's taught me a lot of lessons. But the biggest thing that it's taught me is it's taught me that I'm in control of my own happiness, and it's up to me to own my happiness. And that's a message that I've delivered for a number of years. So fast forward a number of years after I had moved out from my father's house, and I was about 30-ish years old, and I had had a recent diagnosis of PTSD from what had happened to me when I was young. And I was sitting in the psychologist's office because what was happening to me was I had created this world for myself where I moved out when I was 14. I left home. I'd been on my own pretty much since I was 15. And I had created this thing in my mind that was success meant I didn't fail. And if I was successful, I didn't need a dad who loved me. And if I was successful, I could prove to him that I was okay. And there was this real strong success defined my ability to get over what had happened to me. And so what I did was I worked, and I worked, and I worked, and I worked, and I worked some more. And I was successful, and promotion after promotion after promotion, I still wasn't fulfilled. I still had something missing. And I'd been coaching already at this point for a number of years on happiness and trying to get people to take ownership over their happiness and not be a victim of their circumstances. However, I still found in times of stress and in times of like high emotional situations that I had this like feeling of a lot of angst and a lot of just trouble that would hit me. And what was happening was I went and I sat in this psychologist's office, and she tried to get me to say that I was a victim. And I had spent so many years telling people not to be a victim of their circumstances, I couldn't actually say the words. So picture me in a psychologist's office and her saying, "So Melissa, just say you're a victim." They literally wouldn't come out of my mouth. I couldn't actually say the words because to me, if I was a victim, I failed. If I was a victim, I gave him the power and control over myself, and I didn't want that. And so I was lucky enough to have this psychologist who really pushed me. And by the end of the session, I could say I was a victim. And when I finally could say the words, this amazing feeling happened, and I describe it like when you're riding a bike downhill with wind at your back, and when you were little and you were brave, because I would never do it now, and when you have like your feet off the pedals and your hands in the air, right? You know that feeling that you won't do anymore because we now have fears and teeth that we want to keep. And so that's what it felt like. It was like this instant relief within myself. And so what I learned in that situation was that by owning my story, I brought more authenticity to myself. So fast forward a few more years later, and I had to have open heart surgery. I was born with a congenital heart defect. I've had it my whole life. I've worked in the fitness industry for 18 years. I started in the industry in my early 20s. When I was 18 years old, I was told I was going to need to have my surgery within 2 years. I had grown up where the doctors didn't let me participate in sport, and all of a sudden now I was an adult and they said, do whatever you want, just don't jump out of a plane. Okay. So wasn't on my list, so it was okay. So I started exercising, I started eating properly, I lost 70 pounds. Fast forward, 37 years old, they say, okay, now's the time for your surgery. And there's this really neat thing that happens when you work in the fitness industry and your whole career has been built on having your body do things for you. And all of a sudden, it's really humbling when your body can't do the things it used to be able to do. And you can't breathe when you're trying to ride a bike, and you can't breathe when you're trying to teach a fitness class. And so I go and I have my surgery and everything else, and then all of a sudden I realize what fitness has actually done for me. And it was the mental game and the physical health that I actually had. In the fitness industry, the unfortunate thing is we spend a lot of time talking about the outside. We spend a lot of time talking about aesthetics. It's just the reality. When somebody comes in, they don't say, I want my heart to be stronger. They say, I want to look better in a bathing suit. So we spend a lot of time talking about the outside. Well, what happened was 36 hours post-surgery, I should have had to have a blood transfusion. And I didn't have to because of my health. 3 weeks later, I was back in the gym working out, slowly, but I was there because of my fitness level. And then 4 weeks later, post-surgery, I had a pretty major complication where they ended up having to drain 2 liters of fluid from my lungs that I didn't even know was there because of my fitness level. And so what it taught me was this really amazing thing that I could then take to my clients very literally in the fitness world, but also figuratively in the corporate world, was that we have to create ways to make the invisible visible. Because all of a sudden, that's what my health was to me. It was the stuff that I couldn't see that really came out. So then fast forward again to the last year. And the last year of my life has probably been one of the most challenging years I've ever faced. I mentioned my daughter, she's 17, and we've had some really significant mental health issues for the last year. We've had multiple suicide attempts, multiple hospital stays, a number of months where we faced a really major depression that was pretty much kept her in bed. And if there's one thing that any parent in the room can, I'm sure, connect with, it's watching your child suffer and not being able to help them. Watching your child suffer and not being able to help them when you have PTSD that is triggered by a lack of control is debilitating. It's been really hard. But I have learned patience. I have learned to listen. I have learned true empathy. And it's been a really amazing lesson for me as a human. It's made me a better leader, and it's made me realize that the opportunity that I have with the youth who work for me and the young adults who work for me, and what I can do to help them be more successful in the business world. So now we fast forward one more time, and it was a week ago. A week ago, I'm going to get through this, Cole. A week ago, we took my dad off life support last Saturday, and it was one of the hardest things we've ever had to do, but it gave me such a huge opportunity to be authentic to myself. I stood at his bedside and I had the chance. I hadn't spoken to him pretty much at all since I was 18, and I looked at him and I told him I wished he found happiness now. And I told him that I truly hoped that whatever it was that he was searching for at the bottom of a bottle, that he found. And I told him I forgave him. And I felt that this was such a key piece for me with being authentic and really drawing my core purpose in, which is to help people live their happiness no matter what, that I had to have that conversation with him before we let him go. And if there's one thought that I can leave you with before I get pulled off the stage, it is just this. I truly, truly believe that we all have this amazing ability to live through challenges happily and with a smile on our face. And there's going to be yucky stuff that happens, but it doesn't mean it has to take control over us. And it definitely doesn't mean that that's going to be the end. So I do ask that everybody tries to live happy. Thank you.